see every.
I'd like to come back into session, please. And with that, do you have any comments for us before we have any last minute questions from this side of the table?
Well, I think it's good to just kind of collect our thoughts on what we saw there. And I'll certainly defer to some of my colleagues, and we can just rattle off in no particular order some of what our findings were from that. But really appreciate you guys taking us over there. I think that was very helpful. And it reaffirms my thought that this is definitely in a better condition and state than we normally are exposed to on projects. From my vantage point, I saw a lot of original detailing, a lot of telltale signs, whether it's thicknesses, the robustness of some of the lines in the lumber, where you can see the density that you just can't find anymore. Neil even pointed out some of the coloration was indicative of the original construction. We were talking about the windows. They have that movement in them that indicates that they are also very old and original. Most of the detailing looked very good. I mean, we need to strip off some paints and bring it back to life, but that's cosmetic. We had some conversations about how we may best plan and sort some of the materials we have in there. Obviously, there's a few things that are going to need custom replacement. You know, we're looking at the tin ceiling. Some of those are in worse shape than others, but we can get custom replacements and probably move those replacements to the back, and then pull forth some of the original ones to replace some of the ones in the more viewed areas that are more in center. So we'll do some of that to be strategic to make sure it looks very consistent. Even the doors, the hinges are original, like all the details are there. All the signs of a really good construction from over 100 years ago are certainly there. And again, it's not something we typically are lucky enough to find in these buildings of that time. So with that being said, if you guys have any thoughts, I know I just kind of rambled on, but.
I think one thing that's fascinating to me is just hearing each of you have such a personal connection to this, whether you paid your water bills in that building or if you've walked through at one point and seen it in various states of being. And I think one thing that we're just really excited, this might sound cheesy, it sounds cheesy in my head, but we want to be able to tell the story of the building and the story of Southport and not dictate what that story is. And just being there in the building, you can feel it. That's what that.
I think from a law enforcement planning aspect, there's a lot of benefits to the existing building in its current state. You know, one of the things that I was seeing instantly is the high floor to floor, the ceiling heights and everything. So when you talk about trying to fit new infrastructure within that kind of system, you know, we obviously have enough space to accommodate that. But then we also have the benefit of having the newer wings on each side that we can utilize to run a lot of those trunk lines and keep the integrity of that community room open. Now, when I'm designing law enforcement facilities, I always look for opportunities like a community room, you know, a room that maybe gets used 20% of the time. And I'm trying to find other programmatic use for that space as well, too. And I think that there's ways that we could control the security access to that room to either open it up to the public or close it off and keep that to staff. It sits in a position kind of in the center of the building that's going to allow us to do that really well. I think there's an opportunity to save money as well too and reduce some of the construction costs because we could position one elevator that could be a double-sided elevator. One side that would be security access control just for police operations, and the other side could be open to the public. And now maybe you're only paying $250,000 for one elevator instead of having two separate elevators and saving time in the schedule, which always saves money as well too. I think there's some great opportunities to have the interaction with the chief's administration areas on that first floor. We talked a little bit about security needs. I think there isn't an overarching need to necessarily fortify this from a ballistic or a blast requirement. It didn't sound like that risk was prevalent in this area, and that was one of the things we talked about was having in-depth discussion about the risks that are involved because it's unique to every community. We just don't want to take these law enforcement building design standards and guidelines and apply them wholesale because they're not all needed. We want to pick the ones that are applicable to it and do that. But I think there's a limited thing that we would have to do to provide just a little bit more privacy. It could be something as simply as just obscuring the windows, providing a translucent film over the windows up to a person's height. So there isn't a direct view into their office areas. We're always thinking about the CEPTED principles, which is a crime prevention through environmental design. And, that takes into account a whole analysis, and it's from outside of the building in and also from inside the building out. You're controlling views, you're controlling movement, you're controlling security access control. And I think this building has the ability to be restricted fairly easily because of its layout.
Alderman Marcelo, do you have any questions?
Skip past me and let me.
Alderman Carroll.
Yeah, so my only no. So I appreciate your comments as it relates to the police department and the security. I think that for us, one of the, well, certainly for me, one of the important things is that, when you come into that entrance, that we maintain the integrity as much as possible, and that it leads to a common space upstairs that can be used by the people, right? So, and you think that you can accomplish that in this structure for both police and public use?
I do. I think there's a natural progression as I start to see it. As you come in the building, there's the grand staircase off to the side. I think you could add an elevator in possibly one of the new additions, because it would be easier from a structural standpoint to do it in the newer addition than it would be in the existing building. And I think when you do that, you're creating a zone in the building that I would classify as a public zone typically, and you would have access control that would prevent you from being able to get into the staff secure spaces beyond that. But that public zone could extend up to the upper area. And then the room itself could have access control on it. So at times, if the police are going to utilize that room for training or EOC, you're able to close it off to public use. And they wouldn't have the ability to get into it. You're still providing that safe and secure area for them. Or in times that you want to open it to the public, then you remove that access control. The back doors to that room, you lock those down so that they can't get into the back staff areas. And I think, that room from a community room, it can be used as training rooms. It can be used as EOC. It can be used, during hiring events or anything. I mean, there's a lot of flexible uses for it. And as long as you have the ability to change your access control on it, you can do almost anything with it. And I'm always looking for spaces like that. Like I said, the community room, maybe it's only getting used 20% of the time. We're looking for spaces like that to get us close to 100% utilization. How can we do that to increase your operational efficiency?
I like that. I think that one of the requirements would be that we not use these tables in that space.
Alderman Davis.
Well, I will say, police operations, when you're talking about furniture, fixtures, furniture and equipment, that's a whole nother level because, you look at what the chief has on, which is half of what like a patrol officer will have on them. You can't put normal furniture in a police station that gets used 24/7, 365 and expect it to hold up like an office will. It gets destroyed. So we're not looking at a typical office chair. We're looking at office chairs that can support 400 pounds that probably don't have arms on them because you can't sit down with your gun belts. They definitely don't have mesh backs on them because when you sit down, your gun's going to poke through the mesh back as well too. So whole different set of discussions that have to happen on that. Those tables, yeah.
Just real quick on windows, churches typically especially the ones that have very elaborate and antique stained glass windows, they find ways to keep those. They can, something on the outside. Some of them, unfortunately, one of the churches that I serve put plexiglass up. They were more worried about the windows getting broken than, wind damage or any kind of insulation. But I would tell you that that's one of my priorities is try to keep the windows. The ones on the side I see are 8/8s, and the ones in the front are 6/6. But they're all real old, old enough to have rotten wood. Also, I was telling a couple of you that there's a magical place in Wilmington, and I may kick myself for telling you about this, but it's called Legacy Salvage. It's in the back of the Ace Hardware, and it is part of an arm of revenue arm of the Wilmington Historical Society. And whenever a historic house is torn down, the materials go there. And it's a treasure trove of flooring, of tin ceiling tiles, of everything your heart could desire. So rather than tearing anything up because it looks um, irreparable, that's a place to go get something to replace it.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. We have actually done that before. We have some contacts in Wilmington where we are trying to source period accurate and color accurate brick where we needed to do repair work. Bill, I think you actually got your hands dirty a few times looking for custom brick throughout town. And that is the benefit of being in these types of communities where there is a value put on that and it is saved. And even though it can't maybe live on as a building, it can help another building. So we found networks of that. We've certainly utilized it. We found it to be cost effective at times too. And that's a really good point. And so that would be something we would lean on as a priority to try to match what's there with something from that period versus going back with a new product that then would look similar.
One more question. It wasn't clear to me from your schedule. Would we get an initial sketch proposal to see whether this is going in the right direction to meet our needs? And would the police chief work with you and get to see your sketches and thoughts about what his area would be?
Absolutely. After each schematic design and design development, we have a 2-week review periods for when we're at a significant point with those drawings. But throughout the process, we'll be meeting with City of Southport and the police department to discuss the specifics as the design develops.
May I? As it relates to materials, I think there are a lot of modern materials, Marvin Integrity, fiberglass windows that are proportionately accurate to what could exist 100 years ago or more. So I wouldn't want us to get caught. I mean, we want to create a structure that is here in another 100+ years. So I don't want to, I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't want to get caught up on, I've done it. I've repaired old single pane windows. It's a bear. And not that I'm going to be doing it over there, but, or that any of you are, but just sometimes it's better to think long-term. Can we create a product that looks the same, but has a greater longevity and maintenance, and frankly, maintenance?
Yeah, I think those are very fair questions to ask. And as part of our initial activities, including meeting with you all to get a better understanding of your goals and some of your expectations, would be to survey all these things in detail and really get an accurate assessment of how much work it would be to repair some of those windows versus maybe replace or some hybrid of it. Your suggestion about churches in particular, I was having a conversation as we were walking over there. Yeah, there she is. About the church that's next door and how they put what appeared to be a single glazing or plexiglass over it. I actually have done that on churches before to preserve the stained glass because we don't want to ruin that. You certainly can't find that anymore, that quality and that character. But there's some benefits to the conditioning and the HVAC and even moisture control on the interior to level it off with encapsulating it with another piece of glass, build that up. It also protects it in the future. So we may find ourselves in a position where we have to explore a hybrid approach to get the best benefit. From what I saw there, There was one window in particular that appeared to be pretty damaged, but the rest of them were in relatively good shape. So it's a labor of love a lot of times. But again, you have the benefit of a community and an area that really respects this. And a lot of the labor and craftsmen that are here, we can tap into those pools of individuals to help us along the way.
Kelly?
Now that you've all been in the building, is there anything that jumps out as something that's different than what you expected before you went in? Now that you've been in the building, is there anything that jumps out as unexpected versus what they were expecting when we went in?
Yeah, I would say my first impression of it was that it's in far better condition than what was kind of represented in the initial assessment reports. Sometimes photographs don't always portray things in the best of light, and they're unfortunately those reports are written to focus on all the bad elements, but they're not showing you all the good elements. And I think there is a lot more good in that building than there is bad in that building, which was really encouraging. And I think the scale of it was it feels much bigger inside that building than it looks from the outside. And I really appreciated that from a design potential aspect. I think there's a lot of good possibilities that we can have. And again, not only from a design standpoint, but from a system standpoint, we know that we're going to have to be putting new systems in that building. And I think that there's good, effective ways to do it when still maintaining the architectural integrity of the space.
I'll say that it looked better today than it did when I was in there a year ago. Because it actually,
We've put some money into it recently.
It helped because there's literally water was dripping through the roof because I was in there a year ago. So it's looked a lot better today than it did a year ago.
And then I was really encouraged to hear your speaking specifically about police stations and understanding what's needed for that. I think that's a huge part of this in conjunction with the historic preservation is making sure that we're making this a truly functional space that will move the city forward in perpetuity, hopefully.
Yeah, and police agencies they're long living agencies that have a storied history in their fraternal organizations and everything. And whenever you have the opportunity to connect them to a historic building as well too, and to not only highlight the historic nature of the building, but the whole community's story, but then connect it to the police history and their service as well too. I think there could be really some strong opportunities to have some vision statements included in the architectural design, to have some display cases with historical artifacts built into the architecture with some really nice displays and everything. And I think that just helps connect that element with the community as well. And that's what we're looking for these days, right? Is a community involvement with the police. Rather than having them be more of a militaristic, fortified entity, we want to integrate them into the community as much as possible because we think that's what gets you the best police service.
And I think that's very well said, especially for Southport. We are a community that wants inclusion.
Alderman Spencer?
I'm just repeating, I really enjoyed the conversations, walking through and hearing the remarks. And from my point of view, it's safe, secure, and welcoming. I've mentioned several times that I was involved one year when we had a hurricane and things were not looking good. It wasn't a safe place to be at all. And we don't have a lot of places to hide here. So we want to fortify it in terms of safety and make it some place that we can flee to when we have emergencies. So I'm more worried about the safety and the security than the preservation side of it.
Alderman Lay?
It's fairly obvious when you guys went over there, you just weren't looking around. You could see the wheels spinning. I can do this, I can do that, we can do this. And one thing you said that I like very much is we can save money. And we like that a lot.
When I want to go back, we've got a lot of committees and a lot and boards, board of adjustment, that type of thing, that would hopefully use these facilities as well. When we talk about the 20% usage, we want everyone to use this. We're going to have to look at what the police section needs to be and what the public section needs to be. That's one place we're going to have to work through. But we wanted to use all our committees, all our boards to have a place to meet and have plenty of attendance if we had, the necessary. So thank y'all.
Piggybacking on what Alderman Spencer said, we've got 3 boards that need a permanent home. Board of Aldermen, Planning Board, Board of Adjustment. We never know where we're going to be. So it'd be nice to have somewhere we can, put our roots and get things done from there. And people know where we are as opposed to trying to find us.
We take second fiddle sometimes to weddings. This is a very popular wedding venue and the money maker.
I do want to congratulate you on the idea of the flexible walls and things that you can do on the first floor. I thought it was a good idea. I especially like the fact that in your presentation here, the first one, not after walking over there, that you actually brought up the whole idea of security, because that was not in some of the others, and that you're experienced in doing that and you understand how to maximize that, not to block everybody all the time, but how can we be more flexible with modern security measures. So that's excuse me, all good stuff. For the chief, I just run around conversation with him. If you can figure out with him to figure out how you do his display thing, I think he has a ton of stuff that he wants to put in displays that he's been digging up, including a line of duty death that most people didn't even know the Southport even had. So there's all kinds of stuff that historical stuff that the chief has found. So that'll be a good thing. And I enjoyed the conversations when we were over there. Any last comments from you?
I would echo that as well. I found this to be a really enjoyable experience, so I appreciate all your time, all the conversations today. Certainly, if any of my colleagues would like to add to that.
So again, I'd like to thank you all for your time today and the opportunity. We realize the importance of this building to Southport. And as I said earlier, we're all in to do what we can do to help you. We're listening now, and I assure you that we're going to listen going forward. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
One thing, are there any questions that we did not ask that you were hoping or anticipating that we would ask?
How soon can you start? Just being honest,
That man's a closer.
So from your I have one last question based on that. When you're doing these historical things and you have to get permission from whoever we have to get permission from, you're estimating that should take at the outside 9 months to do? Was that my understanding?
Yeah, that's for the drawings and how we're going to develop them. And as we're working on the development of the drawings, we'd also in tandem be talking to stakeholders and AHG.
You do 2 things at one time.
Occasionally, yeah, we try.
This will be the first contract since 1792 that act has been done. So I thank you very much. We usually wait until the very end and then we decide, oh, we need a permit. I will tell you that, and this came up last night at the commissioners meeting, that this area has been plagued governmental wise with terrible contracts. They went on quite a lengthy discussion last night about how they've had problems, which we could put names to our problems that match the same thing. There's no timelines, there's no milestones, there's no penalties, there's no nothing on any of our contracts. And so we're in the position of now trying to change some of that. So I just let you know, when you hear those conversations, It's not directed towards you as a specific organization. It's just that we have not had that ability to get the contracts to have those types of things in it. And last night was kind of refreshing in one sense, kind of comical on the other, watching them struggle through the same things that we have struggled with. And so I just give you that information, just so you know why we're having conversation with the city staff about such things. And with that, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you coming, and you have a pleasant day.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, while we were over there, Alderman Kelly mentioned that we should have the building professionally photographed. I think that'd be a great idea to, I'm sorry, I just think it would be great for us to document that historical, perspective. So, and it's never been more open than it is right now. So just something for us to think about if we could get staff to maybe.
Well, this is an open meeting. Are you making a motion?
I'll make a motion that we instruct staff to hire a photographer to come in and professionally photograph the structure.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Question. You're thinking about like when you have a house for sale and you've got the interiors and all that.
Yeah, I think that the concept is that we document where the structure is today to the very best of our ability for the future, because this is.
It might be a display of what we've done and where it started and where we came.
Well, and
Good idea.
certainly, professional real estate photographers who can bring in lighting and all of that. And then, and really detail shots also, like we want the details of all of the exposed brick that we're seeing right now and where where it's discolored from where they pulled things away from the walls, because at some point it's going to be fixed. And it might not show exactly like it does now. And I think it's just a cool thing to see along the way.
Tom Z?
My recommendation would be to include that in whatever scope of work we put on whatever architectural firm we hire, as opposed to going out with a whole separate thing. Just include it all in that packet.
Then I would amend the motion to mimic what Tom just said.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, did you get the mimic?
I did.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. I'm not sure exactly how long because the other architectural firm is not here yet, but they're here? All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break to get water. Thank you. I'd like to bring the meeting back into order. And lady and gentlemen, you're up for your presentation, please. And what's going to happen then is we'll have a series of questions to ask you after that. Okay? Go ahead.
Am I on now? Now I'm on. Fantastic. Thank you all very much for having us today. My name's Josh Bennett. I'm our civic sector leader for Mosley, and I believe we've all met at some point or another in this process, as we've been working with you all for a few years now on both your town hall and your police station planning project. And we're very honored to be back and have an opportunity to present to you again today. With me today is Lisa Bricker. She is the owner of Golden Leaf Studios, which is a historic preservation studio out of Greensboro. And she has worked on hundreds of historic preservation projects. And in fact, commercial historic preservation, just like this, falls right in line with her passion. So she'll be advising on this project and contributing immensely. Do we have the presentation? Do I just need to? No, probably not. No, it's not. There we go. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Here's one of the historic pictures that we've found of your courthouse, and just kind of demonstrating a little bit about how it changed through the years. We're going to talk very briefly about our team, our experience, your project, and how we can be successful together. So this is how our organizational chart falls out for this project. We will hold a contract directly with the city of Southport. Withers Ravenel will provide our civil consulting services. And as I said, Golden Leaf will provide our historic preservation services. Part of the historic preservation effort is also building scanning, which we have a contract with TrueScan to provide that. Three-dimensional scanning of historic buildings is especially important because it helps us not only document the building itself and its current condition, but it also helps us see parts of the building we might not normally be able to assess. Mosley is an interdisciplinary team. We have all of our architects, engineers, interior designers in-house, save for our civil engineer who comes to us from out of house. And that helps us provide very responsive service and very integrated design. And when we're talking about technically complex projects like police stations, we find that's very important. An engineer who understands how to ventilate evidence, how to deal with locker rooms, how to deal with multiple public and private secure spaces is absolutely critical to this effort. Furthermore, this being a Category 4 structure and requiring those kind of structural improvements, having those structural engineers on staff is also very important because we want to integrate the structure to such a degree that it does not impact the overall fabric of the historic building. And so these are just a few of the projects that we've done from a law enforcement perspective. This is the City of Washington Police Station, the newly opened Henrico Police South Station with a K9 facility. We've got the town of Gibsonville is getting ready to build their new police station here in a couple of, probably this time next year, they'll be under construction. And then Charlotte-Mecklenburg, this is their Independence Station, one of their precincts. Then, of course, Raleigh, we also do training facilities for law enforcement. This is the Raleigh Law Enforcement Training Center, just outside of Raleigh on the eastern side. And this is where they do all of their BLET training. So it's important to understand that BLET training comes into play because how you train and how you work are very similar. And so we understand how police officers are trained in North Carolina and ultimately how they're going to be working. So when it comes to talking about historic preservation, Lisa and I were talking about what projects we'd want to feature and what we'd want to talk about. And whatever reason, it didn't dawn on me. Our headquarters in Richmond, Virginia is on the National Historic Register. And at the time that we opened, it was one of 3 projects on the Historic Register that was also LEED Platinum. So we're very proud of that building. The adaptive reuse that we went through for that project was so seamless that I don't often consider it as necessarily a historic building. It's a well reused building. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. It's located in historic Scott's Addition, which is, if there is such a designation, the largest concentration of Art Deco warehouses on the East Coast. I don't know who looked that up or found that, but I thought it was pretty interesting. The existing warehouse was built in the 1930s and it was placed on the historic register. They used to fit up rail cars in this building. And so you can see it's a large masonry structure, and then it has an adjacent garage to it, the metal building on the right in the upper right-hand corner. And that whole campus is considered historic. You can see in the lower right, there's steel structure inside. That building, when it was originally constructed, was a masonry building. It had no steel framing inside of it. It had a bow truss roof, and it had wood on the underside of the roof. And what we did was we came in and with a very sensitive sandblasting process. It's not sand, it's actually walnut shells. We used that to peel away some of the finish on the wood because it had tarnished over the years and restored that to its natural finish. The structure that we put into the building was specifically designed so that it was independent from the masonry structure of the building. So we brought the building up to code by bracing the masonry structure that was there, but we implemented the new structure so that it could be removed, and which is compliant with the National Historic Register requirements. That includes putting in an elevator in this building, which I think is something that's vitally important to this project that you all are talking about here. Being able to implement an elevator and accessibility means of transportation in a public building, especially a historic one, is something that we pay very close attention to. And then this is going to be a police station, right? So overall, it has to be durable. This building's going to experience 3 times the wear of a normal building in its lifespan. A police station does not shut down. It's open all the time. Officers are constantly moving through it. So we look at things like our corridor design, our closed circuit camera provisions, furniture considerations are important. You'll notice that chief is sitting in a chair with no arms on it. There's a reason for that, is if he's wearing his duty belt and it gets hung up when he's standing up on a chair with arms, that can cause problems. So paying attention to small details like that in a public safety facility is important. Of course, we want the lobby to be welcoming, but also secure, to have some bullet resistant construction in it, so that if somebody comes into the main lobby and is looking to do harm, we've provided a means of protection for our officers. Community meeting space, and of course, a space like we're in today, moving that to the historic courtroom will require some upfit of things like audiovisual requirements and having space for food service if we want. And I think we've talked about the possibility of having a break room or some other small kitchenette off to the side of this space. Briefing and report writing is still absolutely critical. When the officers come back, they need to charge their BWCs, their radios, they need to write their reports and file all their reports for the day, have mailboxes where they can receive information. And then, of course, that break room I just discussed, a place to have a quiet moment and some camaraderie with fellow officers. Interview rooms are critical. If we're going to implement these interview rooms, we like to look at a system where we can combine recording with the light switches on the room, so that if you go into the room, turn on the light switch and you're in the space, it's always recording. That's absolutely critical for these law enforcement officers to have their conversations on tape at all times in this day and age. And of course, if you're going to get, if you're going to lose your job in a police station, it's probably going to be in evidence, right? This is the space in a building where the most errors can occur, because this is where we're tracking chain of custody so tightly. Did you preserve the evidence properly? Did you store it properly? Did you catalog it properly? So if we design the building to match your standard operating procedures for how we do evidence, it's a lot easier for you all to conduct your daily business in law enforcement. Mosley Architects has a robust quality control program. As I said, everybody's in-house. We design all of our buildings in 3D. We'll have 3D scans of your building. So it makes it easier for us to catch coordination items early on. And communication is vitally important, right? Making sure that we've documented all of our meetings and all of our decisions, so that when Lisa goes and reports to the state what we've done to their historic building, they know exactly how we arrived at the solutions that we came up with. And of course, three-dimensional images and samples of what we propose to go into the building will just help communicate the intent as we move forward, so that you guys stay informed of what we're doing with this important asset. Cost control, we want to look at the cost of the project overall. Okay, total project budget, not just how much it costs to renovate the building, but what does it cost for furniture, testing? What does it cost for any graphics or signage? Those kinds of things need to be considered, and we'll help you monitor that as we move through this process. Schedule control as well, a detailed schedule breakdown, again, allowing the Board of Aldermen to be in control and know where we are with the project at all times. It results from good communication, but also communicating those strict deadlines. So I know we had about 10 minutes. I hope I didn't go too far over. With that, I know we wanted to have some questions and possibly a tour.
Alderman Lay?
Have you previously been in the building, or is this going to be the first time you go in there?
No, sir, I've been in there. Some of the photographs in there were from our most recent visit.
Not been in the building
Okay.
yet, but I have read the inspection report.
Okay. Since you've been in the building, what do you think of its condition?
It's in, so several years ago, when we first started working together, I couldn't go into the building because I didn't have a hazmat suit. So I'd say it's in far better condition today than it was 3 or 4 years ago. It is in serviceable condition. As Elisa said as we walked around, she said, I've seen far worse. But I think it's in sufficient condition to where we can certainly rehabilitate it for the function that's proposed.
It is, Lisa?
Yes.
When you're speaking, we need to have you go to the mic, not because we can actually hear you, but this is being recorded and they can't hear you unless you're next to the mic. Frank, do you have anything else? Alderman Spencer? Alderman Kelly. Alderman Davis.
Yes, the focus of your remarks and presentation seem to be primarily police use. However, there are two uses for this building and they are equally important. And we are very focused on trying to preserve all of the interior architectural features, especially upstairs. This is one of the 5 oldest courthouses in the state of North Carolina still in use. And it is, it's really important to this town. We have a historical preservation commission, and that building, it may not look like a beauty place, but it is the very heart of the historic district of Southport. So both exterior and interior really need to be preserved. And I didn't hear much about your thoughts upstairs.
Sure, I can speak to that. So I mentioned to Josh just this morning, I said, what a wonderful space that they still have this courtroom and it could be for the public use and stay as a city use. It's always been a civic building and it can continue to be a civic building. It's the most, I think, positive and encouraging thing we can do for that building in terms of, a rehabilitation project for the National Park Service. In terms of the interior finishes, I have not personally been in the building yet, but what I've seen from the photos, I have a hunch that there are some really amazing finishes that might be concealed behind the drop ceilings, behind the finishes of the floor. And I think that there's going to be a lot of character there that it's going to be, vital that we do preserve. When we think about preserving, it's not just, the materials or the components, it's also the space. And by reusing that courtroom as a public meeting space, that in itself is preserving that space. I think that's really important as well. So.
Alderman Mustoller.
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions. So the floor is on the upstairs. Is my opinion, it is critical that we keep. It's 1844 floor. It's hidden, a big hunk of it's hidden under a piece of plywood that used to hold carpeting. So those types of things are important. But on page 3 of your paper presentation you gave us, there's a list of things that you don't do. And one of them is security design services. If you don't do the security design services that you wrote here, I'm trying to figure out how we look. This is yours, right? Yeah, it says Mosley right on it.
Yeah, what is that?
This is what we were given.
Oh, I didn't know you were giving this. We do security design services. I'm not sure when.
There's a lot of things on there you don't do that I thought was kind of critical for the whole program.
We do security design services. Now, what are some of the other ones you're questioning?
Oh.
I didn't realize that was part of today's.
Well, it's a presentation that you gave us for the initial RFQ, I guess it was. Yeah. So furniture design services, do that according to this. Site modifications beyond the installation of new stairs and ramps at entrances and beautification of landscaping. I'm not sure where we get the ramps and stairs from and beautification. I'm not sure what that sentence actually means.
So it means that we're not redoing a parking lot or the
Okay.
entire site or adding security fences. We're going to we need some new stairs at the back. We need some ramps for accessibility. And we need landscaping for beautification on the project.
Okay. Measured drawings of the existing building?
Right, we're providing a building scan of that.
Okay. So you do the what you think is the equivalent of that then?
Yeah, so we
Okay,
provide
all right.
that as a different service.
Modifications to existing utilities and services.
Right, so the utilities that come to the building, so the electricity that comes to the building, we're not running new service. We're not going back to the town and running new water.
But I guess how I interpreted that is inside of the building.
No, when we talk about utility, we're talking about outside. the
Okay.
building. Yes, sir.
Site lighting, so basically you're looking at the interior of the building as opposed to any exterior stuff. So for the stucco that's there that needs to be refreshed or whatever we're going to do with it, your plan that you presented here would not involve that conversation.
It would.
It would.
It would. Site lighting is referring to like a parking lot pole light or something like that that would be run.
Okay. Well, the one that really caught me obviously was no, you don't do security services. So I didn't know how that would work, but you're claiming that
Yeah,
that should not have been
That
in
should
there.
not have been there. I
Okay.
apologize.
All right. So
Why would it have been in there?
Excuse me?
Why would it have been in there?
It was an error on my part.
So did you just recently start providing that service?
No, we've always provided that service.
Then I'm struggling to understand why it would ever have been in any document you would have ever had.
Because I CUFR'd a document, and on that previous project, we hadn't provided security design services because it wasn't a secure facility. When I CUFR'd that document, I accidentally left that in. It was an error on my part, and I apologize.
okay, so you do provide that service when it's required, and so this page was from another.
I don't have a copy of our RFP response in front of me, but I believe John Edmond was referenced in there as our security systems designer.
Okay.
So that would be part of what we provide.
All right. Any other questions? I'm going to turn to you for this too. Since she has not been in the building, do we take her over to the building and show her around? Okay. So we're going to recess and walk, those who want to walk over, those who have already been over there just today, recently, like the last 30 minutes, probably don't need to go, or if they don't want to, but certainly let's go over and show you the building.
And I had put together a brief timeline of the building. I don't know, it might be new, it might not be news to you all, but, just so we can, when we're looking, I think it'll be important to talk about some of these things. So building was built in 1854, and in 1922, there was a fire. And as a result of that fire, the courtroom was remodeled, and a lot of the finishes were remodeled within the space as well. They also added the front porch and the fan light. And I have some images too I can share. And then again, in 1957, there was another fire. It seemed like it was more contained in 1957, from what I could tell from the news articles. And then in 1968, the wings were added on either side of the building. And the stucco from in the newspaper, it said it was added as a waterproofing way to help the brick. I'm assuming they were having water infiltration issues at that time. And I mentioned to Josh too, a lot of times I've worked on previously brick buildings that have been coated in stucco. And what happens over time is you'll paint that stucco with the incorrect paint, and that paint doesn't allow water to escape. So that's something to keep in mind as we're looking at particularly the interior of the walls as we walk through. If I'm assuming there's going to be some water moisture infiltration, but so.
We had the building, we had remediation done on the building. So right now, we have an air conditioning system blowing in there to keep the humidity down and the temperature relatively down. So you look at that. I'll be interested in when we walk over for your professional expertise on the floor. We're under the belief that that's the original I thought it was 1844, 1854, whatever it is.
I've seen both dates.
Yeah, the original flooring is still there. And so it's important that that architectural design and it seems to be in miraculously great shape. The ceiling has, in many places, has hardwood above it. Maybe 1920-ish, something like that. Okay, still 100 years old. So we'll take a break and go over there, and then we'll come back and you'll have an opportunity to talk about what you saw, and then we'll ask you some follow-up questions. Okay? Thank you. Are we ready, ma'am? No, the other ma'am. I'd like to call this meeting back into order. Can you give us your thoughts?
Sure. I talked to several of you while we were in there, but there's a lot of character there. I think most of it probably dates to the 1920s. The wood floors, they're narrow board and they're machine cut, which indicates that they were not from the 1850s. At that point, we would have seen wider 6-inch, 8-inch planks. But that being said, it is still historic, and it would be within the period of significance of this building, and it's worth preserving. Same thing with the windows. I actually think the windows are probably 1850s, and potentially the trim around some of the windows upstairs. Downstairs, I could tell on the wings, obviously that was not original windows from the 60s, but it was a interesting interpretation with the trim. So I think, part of what we would do is we would, put together historic integrity diagrams where we're looking at, okay, this space, we would need to be especially careful in the space. But the wings from the 60s wouldn't be technically considered historic. I mean, but today's standard, they might be, but for the period of significance for this particular building, they wouldn't be. So you can take more liberties in those spaces and not be as true to the historic character there. And then, yeah.
So I think we also had the opportunity to discuss a little bit about how you integrate a secure facility and a community facility in a historic building and how far that goes. And obviously, each one of those functions and uses and requirements have different levels of input, right? So if we have a secure police facility, that's going to need some separation from the public. If we have a public facility, it does need to be open. And so balancing that with you all is going to be a strong discussion that we need to have so that we keep the character of the building and enhance the pieces that we're most interested in preserving while still providing that security and functionality.
Alderman Lay, do you have any additional questions?
Just one, from start to finish, how long do you think it will take, and what do you think to begin with? What are the biggest holdbacks or roadblocks to get going?
So I think we're probably between 6 and 9 months for design. Does that sound reasonable to you, Lisa? And then construction on a project like this would typically be between 12 and 14 months after a procurement period of probably 2 to 3 months. So right at 2 years, if not a little longer. That would be a pretty, I'd say, aggressive schedule, but one that we could easily accomplish.
Alderman Spencer.
Nothing prolific, but it is going to be a battle between functionality and preservation, and we want to preserve as much as possible. But my focus is on safety, security, and longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to build a building that's safe for us. As we talked about earlier, a secondary EOC, a place that we can, if we have some kind of event, we can all gather. Some of us sitting and listening, some of us working, type of thing. So I want to make sure this is a safe place for us to be during the hurricanes and things of that nature.
Absolutely. And I respect that, and I appreciate the comments about multi-use of space, right? And I think we've talked to the chief a little bit about that as well, because every now and again, they have training for their officers. They have briefings that they need to do. So the more multi-use functions we can get out of that community room or alderman room space, the better. What we don't want to do is sacrifice the functionality of any one of those functions, right? So if we declare the primary function is for an alderman's chambers, then we would want to enhance that and make sure we're meeting that. And then What we don't want to do is undo any of the work for the security and the functionality of the alderman's room to make it a briefing room for the police, right? If we can make it an EOC, let's make it an EOC, but let's not make it so complicated or disruptive that it detracts from what we're trying to accomplish. You may say, well, Josh, why are you saying it that way? You're trying to do a project for us. My job is to come in and tell you what we see and what we've experienced on other projects. So.
Alderman Kelly.
Now, Josh, you've been in the building before, so this is probably more towards Lisa. Is there anything that you saw in the building now that you've been in that changes what you thought you were going to walk into before based on the pictures and the documents you saw?
Not a whole lot, I could see in some of the pictures that there was the wood ceiling, seeing the extent of the wood ceiling, that was good to see. That was in really great shape, that it hadn't been cut and punctured too much, it's repairable. Nothing that was out of the ordinary in terms of things we've seen in the past, it's all fixable, and there's, I think, good solutions for everything we talked about, doing, keeping the windows, restoring the windows, and then coming back with the ballistic proof glass on the interior face. That would align with like the Department of Cultural Resources and the National Register requirements. And then also, other options we had a question about AV and electrical. Since the plaster has been removed up to a certain point, that'll make it a lot easier. We can channel plaster fairly easily, and that would be considered okay. The other thing we can do is, conceal outlets or AV and data within like a molding, since the moldings are also missing. That way you can get them at a chair rail height and also at the base level height. So.
Alderman Davis.
Did you see anything that you don't think you can save? Any of the interior architectural features that are somewhat historic, very historic, whatever? Anything that you think you just couldn't save and we would have to give up?
I didn't see anything from my perspective. We'd have to look maybe more in depth at the windows. I noticed in some of the report images that there was extreme rotting, particularly at the sills of the windows. That's to say it can't not be done, but we'll just have to look at it, I think, a little bit more closely. There are a lot of great window restoration companies.
And I think that's a lot of the profiles that are in that building are still available because they are fairly common for that time, and they are still produced in quantities that if we have to repair, that's easily done.
Yeah, and then the other thing too, I would say, I noticed that the bead board had been taken out. Is that still available somewhere? Do we have those profiles, or is it gone? Just out of curiosity.
Gone.
I think, and most of the things that were taken out were in such bad condition that they had to be taken out.
Windows. Well, you mentioned the windows. Is it, I don't think those are necessarily very historic. I don't see wavy or grainy glass or anything. But at the same time, given the very high cost of quality windows, especially of that size, I'm thinking Anderson windows and so on. Have you dealt with a situation where you restore the windows and protect them with a extra pane of glass or something rather than a full replacement?
Yes, we've done that in the past. And there's also, we're not going to be looking for operability. So that will probably reduce the costs as well, because you're not going to want to open these windows for security reasons, I'm assuming.
Right.
So that would reduce costs as well in terms of rehabbing the windows. But I would try to keep them if we possibly can.
As a firm who owns a historic building and did a historic preservation project on it, I can tell you that our Richmond office had some very unique windows in it, and we restored those, and we were under strict requirements to keep a certain type of glass, a certain type of frame profile, and it ultimately became better for us to rehab those windows, and they've functioned for the better part of 12 years now, just fine. So.
Final question. Our Historic Preservation Commission we've already just had a public hearing. they've worked for 3 years on the standards for the district, for all of the materials, all of the elements that go into preserving the historic character of the buildings in town. Are you familiar with those?
I haven't read these specific ones, but I've worked in districts all throughout the Southeast, including Charleston, which is one of the strictest boards of architectural review in the South, and then also a lot in Richmond. I'm sure, and most of this project's gonna be focused on the interior. The exterior, I don't see any issues with any modifications that we would make in terms of, we're gonna be keeping the character, and we're gonna make it, I think, the goal at the end of the day is you want it to be, modern, up to date, but you don't want it so different, but you want it different enough that someone could look at it and say, that's newer. So I think that's kind of, what we'd be looking for on some of the exterior.
Yeah, aside from taking off the ductwork, right?
Right.
Take the ductwork off.
Yeah.
Alderman Carroll. Alderman Mosteller.
You.
I do have a couple of questions. One is, did you look at the windows upstairs? I was under the impression that they're like old.
I think they're pretty old.
Yeah, I think they're a little
original.
wavy myself, but that's just maybe me.
That's you.
So, I mean, everybody who's been in that building has told me the same thing and I didn't even start the conversation that those windows upstairs are old.
I mean, I'm sure you all have seen, this is, the drawing from 1865, from the Civil War, but it has 8/8 windows, which the building currently has, at least in the front of it. It also has shutters, which I found interesting. And then later, I noticed that they added gutters and downspouts, which are no longer present on the building. So that's something you want to look at.
Okay, thank you. A sidebar conversation, because no matter who does this, they're going to have to probably do the same thing. And just so you don't get caught by surprise, when you are standing on the second floor and you're about to go down the stairs, there's a railing that's too low to pass muster, just so you know that. Even though it may be a historic, like over 100 years old, they may have to add to it somehow with something. But just so you're aware of that.
That railing can stay. One that meets the code over on the other.
That's what we hire the engineers for. I just know that this it doesn't meet muster. Pass muster, I guess is the word. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Okay.
your time.
I'm going to take a 5-minute recess and then we need to come back and talk about next steps. Okay?
Okay. I can see it.
So we have some. I know, because we're all experts at this stuff. So we're at the point now that we have to discuss the next steps. There are, in my mind, several options. One, we could ask staff to go into explaining the finer points of why they made the decision that they made. So I'm not sure that I understand why they did that. Two, we can hold off on the decision and come back for a meeting at another time, the next couple of days. Or if somebody wants to make a motion and they get it passed, then I guess that's where we are.
Is our third not showing?
I'm sorry,
Is the third is not showing? Creech is not showing?
Creature's not showing, they have withdrawn.
Okay.
Yes. So that's where we are. So for the moment, why don't we just have a comment period about what you may want to consider. Alderman Marcelo, why don't you start?
I mean, I kind of know what my thoughts are based on today's interviews that I would like to work with HDR. I don't know, is that the kind of discussion you want to have?
It is. I think everybody should
I think-
have the discussion and we talk about the pros and cons of doing something today And then if you want to move forward with doing something today, then it's the pleasure of the board.
The reason, a lot of, obviously, they're talented and they have a background that lends itself to this kind of a project. I also am encouraged because they're local. They've done other projects in our town and different types of projects. So I think there were a lot of perks with that. And they have a historian on staff.
Alderman Carroll?
I agree with that assessment. I think they were certainly today extremely well polished with their presentation, and I think they did hear us. I think they're going to work well with Chief Coring to design a space that functions for the police department, but they also understand the importance of the public space. So I could make that decision today that they were great.
Alderman Davis?
Ditto, all that. But I'd also like to hear from Tom and Noah, because I'm sure you guys had your ears open about the things that they were saying over there at the building. And what are your impressions?
Yeah, I agree. I think, HDR really went above and beyond today to show us what they can do. And I think, though we've had that experience with Mosley, that I think they offer a great deal as well. I think, not hearing from HDR before in any work we've done with them, I think this was a great experience to see what they can offer and bring to the table. And I think either one of them would be good, but I do think that HDR did a great presentation today to show us their strengths.
Would you like to speak?
When the RFQ went out, there was a grading system and points were assigned for different things. Unfortunately, I don't have that with me, so I can't go through that. Staff went through all the proposals, all the proposals we received, and we graded everybody on them individually. As part of that, Mosley in those gradings came out with staff, and the staff was myself, Chief Coring, Mo Meehan, Planning Director, Tom Stanley, Public Services, and Noah, the manager. As part of that, Mosley came out about 20 points higher than the next person in line based on their RFQ, what was included in it, how they went about it, their process. One of the big things that we liked about Mosley was their time frame. Their time frame was to get it out to bid was about 6 months faster than everybody else. And that was important, we felt. So
that sounded right in line with what we saw. Both of them were pretty much in line today. 6 to 9 to get to bidding, and then another.
HDR was about 12 months to bidding.
Not in today's presentation.
In their RFQ, it was 12 months to bid, and it was about a 26 to 30-month process overall. So.
Well, having met them and listened to them and been with them over at the building, both of the firms, are you still in your mind seeing Mosley as the better choice?
I feel that way because of their experience with the city already as part of the study that brought us to this point. So they have all the background work in place.
The only example of historic restoration that they showed us was a warehouse. This isn't a warehouse.
Yeah, I wasn't picking up on their I don't think that they got our focus. They've got an idea about what that building can be and should be, and it wasn't very close to what we were thinking and what our values are for that building. And all they talked about was police stations, and that's what they showed us. they didn't show us a historic interior. I mean, one of their pictures shows a room in a historic building that has LVP floors, for crying out loud. So my thinking is the first firm.
You would just ask for my opinion. That's what it is. Fortunately, I'm part-time and retired, so I could speak my mind freely. And if you don't like it, tell me to leave.
No, if this goes
I'm
south,
not
we're blaming you.
My job is to give advice. Whether people take my advice or not, I'm not insulted. I've been doing this a long time. I've developed thick skin. We will work with whoever is chosen.
Let me put my question another way. Do you think that that it's possible or likely that we would go wrong picking that first firm?
Say that again. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
Do you see any pitfalls to the first firm? Do you see any pitfalls to the first firm?
The only pitfall is they're months behind Mosley. Both firms are professional. Both firms have the capability to do the job. We staff, and I don't want to throw Chief under the bus, but we've been working with Mosley, so there is a relationship there already, and we're very comfortable with that relationship. Whoever comes in, we're going to work with. That's our job.
Alderman Kelly.
I agree that HDR's presentation seemed extremely polished today. I wrote down 22 months to completion, 9 months for permitting, and then they said 21 to 26 months for the entire project is what I wrote down from their conversation today. I think Lisa Bricker, who came with Mosley today from Golden Leaf, is fantastic. And I think that she brings a lot. And obviously I had already done a lot of research on the property. However, it felt like she was someone they brought in, not someone that was part of their team. So I, because of that, I tend to lean towards HDR as well.
Alderman Spencer.
I'm not going to say who I lean to until I have to vote, but she did come with the historical reference, the different time periods that building has changed, analyzing the materials as she walked through, looking at things. I got to hear more from her in terms of the historical background, when things were changed, how they were changed, looking at the different materials. So I was very impressed with her background in the knowledge of this building, and knowing how many changes have been made is very important. It's like my parents' house. It's been a bunch of changes, and if you don't know how they changed it, then it's hard to fix it. So Mosley's presentation of the historic background was better than HDR. They came with a large force of people, and we got to talk to a bunch of entities, which made it better for HDR. They had a better presentation.
Alderman Lay.
There's a concept out there when you make a presentation called mood and manner, how you present yourself. HDR came in, as you said, with a whole crowd full of people, and they just interchanged pop, 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 pop. Mosley'd been here before, but they didn't show what I call a lot of pleasant enthusiasm about the project. What you picked up, Mayor, on the error, it might have been inadvertent, but if you're going to make a presentation to a group like this, somebody should have proofread that, and that should not have been there. Now, again, that's just me being picky, maybe, but HDR was more polished. They were more enthusiastic. Not being a civil engineer, there's some things that I wouldn't know, but again, I'm just looking at first impressions.
I think that part of the issue is the document that we were using. Although we were sent that document, there's apparently another document that I don't have. And so I'm not going to gig Mosley too much for this document. He admits he made a error to have that section in even in this document. All right, so
Still should proofread
as
it.
much as you may not realize this, but I have erred in the past myself. And so, I can buy into that. I'm actually neutral on the whole thing. I'm going to I'm going to have you guys decide what is our next step. Is there a motion today? Do we do it another day? I would entertain any motion to do, hold on, Tom C.
The way getting work done with consultants, professionals within North Carolina, any motion today would to be open up negotiations with a firm on a price and things, not to award them, but to open up negotiations.
Thank you for that clarification. So what's the board's pleasure?
In that case, I'd like to make a motion that staff open up some negotiations with HDR for the restoration and reuse of our historic courthouse for the police station and public chambers as well.
There's a motion and a second. In discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye and please raise your hands. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Mr. Manager, is there anything else that we're missing today?
That's all we have. Like Tom said, we'll work with them to get a contract together and bring that forth and bring a budget amendment for that expenditure. But we're excited to move forward as well and get the project started.
Thank you, Tom Z. Thank you, Mr. Manager, Chief, ladies, always. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
There's a motion, a second. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. We stand adjourned.